First of all, thank you to our City Council liaisons for coming here this evening. I think the first order of business is to introduce new members of the Open Space Committee. We're really delighted. We're up to full strength. So this is Ross and this is Mary. Maybe the existing members of the committee should introduce ourselves first and then have you say a little bit about yourselves. How's that? Michelle.
I'm Michelle Salmon. I've been on the committee for
Ever?
No, only 6 years.
Really?
I'm the one that's been on for
Glenn's been here forever. And I love the work that we do.
So I'm Glenn, soon to be outgoing chair. I've been on the committee now for a really long time, 12 years, I think. And I've really enjoyed getting to know what cities do and how they can play a role in sustainability and, trying to craft policies to move that onward. So it's been a learning experience for me. So I'm really glad to be here.
I am Meg Ankenbrook. Hi, welcome. This is my second season.
Second term?
Session term. That's it, session term. Second term. So it's been wonderful. I mean, this is a real passion of mine, and also it's been great to learn from Glenn, Michelle, and Barbara, and Michael, and some of the other people around here that have served on this committee. A lot of really great information, and a lot of really great strength here. So we really welcome you guys, and are looking forward to some new blood. Yeah. And it's always great new ideas. So
great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Mary, why don't you first?
I'm Mary Rogers. Been living in Brisbane for like 29 years plus. It's time to give back to the community. I hope to add value to the committee. I'm not much of an open space type person. I love open space, but I hope to learn a lot from you guys and contribute back.
Great. Thank you.
My name is Ross Dykes. I've been a resident of Brisbane for a little over 6 years now. I live up on Kings Road, and I really like this area, and I really like the fact that I'm right up against the park and then and the hill, and there's wonderful space around here, and I want to do what I can to make it available for future generations.
Great. Well, thank you both. We're really glad to have you, and our other new member, Claire, who joined us last time, and I guess will be here a little bit later this evening. So, has everybody had a chance to look at the agenda?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Any amendments, changes, additions?
Looks good to me.
Or may I have a motion?
Move to adopt the agenda.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the agenda is adopted. This is a time for the multitudes to make public comments to the Open Space Committee. We would love to have some. Please join us for a meeting and tell us what's on your mind. We would like that. But since there is no visible audience at this point, let's move right into item number 4, a discussion of our 2018 work plan with our council liaisons, Karen Cunningham and Terry O'Connell, who have kindly joined us. Thanks for coming. Okay, so it's up on the screen there, and we all have it in front of us. So how would we like to do this?
The format doesn't have to be too structured. I think the council liaisons have had a chance to see our work plan, and we've talked to them. Staff has talked to them a little bit about it. So I think we can go through items if anyone's interested, or we can talk about specific things that we'd like to highlight. I mean, I think we've gotten some feedback from the liaisons at the staff level, so I guess we should talk about some of those items. Maybe that makes the most sense.
What if we just asked the council liaisons first for their comments and questions? Would that work, rather than going through it point by point to start with?
Yeah, we can try that, yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Terry O'Connell, and I am so glad to be here, and I'm so proud of the work that the sitting committee members and the outgoing committee members and the new committee members have done and will do in the future for Brisbane. It's been very interesting to get a perspective and to have this committee do a lot of the legwork that we need to do as a city to stay up on climate change, open space, and other pertinent information that you guys bring to us. And working with staff, we get some of the information that you bring to us and some of your ideas, and it's been very nice to have that information come to us through you and a lot of hard work that you give. So that's my start, and then we can,
Okay.
if Karen has anything she wants to say to start, and then we can discuss a little bit of what we had in regards to our subcommittee meeting on your work plan.
Okay, great.
Thanks. It's great that people are willing to serve, and it's so nice to see people who've been here for a long time, and then the new people who've jumped in. What I'm looking for is some fresh ideas. I think it's really important that sometimes I think gets lost in the mix on any committee and any commission, even in the city council sometimes, is a little bit of groupthink. And I just really want to stress that whether you've been here for 12 years?
Glenn's 12.
12 years, 4 years, 6 years, or 6 minutes, that your input is just as valid. And I really want to stress that, adding your individual thought processes to the mix is going to be really, really important. I mean, we all come to whatever committee or commission or council with a certain set of thought processes that we think are right, and I think it's really important that we sit back sometimes and just really listen to what other people have to say, and not be afraid to get out of the box and go against the grain and say, yeah, I agree or disagree, or and here's why. I don't ever want to think that anybody's just going along with the program because, maybe some people who are a little bit more senior to them think that's the right way to go. I really want to hear the independents coming out. So with that, off you go, Terry.
Off we go.
Off we go.
So you as a group had submitted a work plan to us to review, and some of the documents were some of the letters that go back 3-4 years on ideas you had or requests you made to the council. We sort of looked at those and went over them to a certain degree that we could, and sort of came up with whether we thought they were, really good ideas to be working on in the future, or if we thought that they may have a high cost associated or may have a high legal ramification. And so we sort of gave our opinions, but it wasn't an opinion that went back to council. This was just our subcommittee opinion, so it's not written in stone that what we talked about is, the road we want you to go down. If you can convince us otherwise or convince staff otherwise on things, we're certainly open to that, because we're just the conduit to bring back to the council, and we certainly appreciate all the input and the things that you've been trying to work on and the changes you're trying to implement. So it's an open book as we go along. One of the things that we had talked about was the energy savings ordinance, and we thought it had some really good merits on both commercial and home residential. But what we really came down to was that as a committee, we thought it would be easier for our citizens, and not that any of this is easy, but to start with commercial rather than go right into residential, because if the commercial has the potential for saving so much more because there is so much more of it. So the sort of the direction that we gave to staff was that we thought it would be good for you to bring the commercial back with some sort of recommendation on how to implement it, and how we could build it into our new leases and new businesses coming in so that they're on board and they can look at their renovations and their sustainability options and work it into their business plan, because it's going to take them a little bit of time too. We may have some that jump on board like By Right has done. They've done a very good job of bringing in a lot of sustainability features into their businesses, into their business operation. But it was something that we thought that we would want to concentrate on commercial first. Is that?
I think that sums it up perfectly. You know, one of the things that I think we really need to keep in mind, whichever way we're going, is, you know, the make those who can pay idea needs to be scaled back mentally. We need to make it fair. And I know, as you know, having just personally done a kitchen renovation, I did put LED cans throughout my kitchen, and they were $400 a piece. I could afford to do that. I wouldn't want to think that somebody else in Brisbane who wants to do a kitchen renovation, who can't afford to do that, is told they can't do a kitchen renovation because they can't afford to do LED cans. I mean, ultimately, that's the goal. And I think if we continue with an educational process on these things, we're going to get more people on board. If we can come up with, you know, here's what you're going to spend up front, here's the long-term savings, those kind of things, rather than saying, shoving it down, you know, a resident's throat, saying you can't do this. The commercial properties can probably absorb it a little easier. But I think the educational part of it is where we're coming from, that, you know, we catch a lot more flies with honey than we do with something else.
Response?
Of course.
Yeah, I've been on the subcommittee that's working on this ordinance for a long time, so let me say a couple things about it. First, we entirely agree that we need to start with commercial because that's where the biggest energy savings will come. And also, you know, we live here. We know a lot of people don't have much money, so we're entirely down with an ordinance that will impose activities, and really the activities we're talking about for the biggest commercial building owners are really audits to let them, wherein they will find out how they're using energy and where, and that will explain to them energy savings, right? So we're really not trying to shove anything down anybody's throat. We've got a whole spreadsheet that Adrian did for us that looks at energy saving ordinances across the country. And so we're looking at those and trying to pick out the features that we like and that we think are most appropriate to Brisbane. So that's really the direction that we are already moving. And when we're done, when we have something to submit to you, it will be commercial. It will impose requirements basically for audits and assessments on the largest businesses first, and with a generous time, you know, phase-in period. So they're not going to be socked with something that says in 6 months you have to do X.
Hopefully those lights won't be so expensive in a year or so down the road. We can get some discounts or something too.
Can I jump in too? Staff attends countywide working groups with everyone, all the other staff from other agencies, and we talk a lot about what everybody else is doing and how to, beyond just requirements and just hammers, how to get people, you know, residential or commercial, to think about energy upgrades before the contractor's applying for the permit, and you've already decided that you're not buying the most energy efficient, and how to get that life cycle cost and that energy savings that pays for those improvements, how to get that information to people. So we're actively working on that part too. We don't just want to have a hammer, we want to motivate people, and that's always part of this. This is included in that item. We're not just trying to penalize, we're trying to incentivize too.
Can I say something? Comment? Have we thought about incentivizing those folks, commercial and residential, as they're applying for the permits, to offer a discount, a slight discount to encourage them to put in those type of energy-saving lights or whatever? I mean, I would consider that if I was
Well, I think
doing a
there's-
kitchen remodel or a new building.
Yeah, I think there's room to improve in getting the rebate information out to
Yeah.
people, but I mean, that's good. We can talk about it. I'm not sure if the cost of the permit, cutting that down, is enough incentive when maybe.
But they may think twice about it. In the
So,
days.
so one thing to keep in mind, and I might be speaking out of turn because we don't have a financial advisor here tonight. The cost of our permits are basically based on the time staff needs to process the permit and do the paperwork. And I'm not sure that we can, as a city, subsidize some people's permits and not others, and have it still be fair. So I agree with staff that
Okay.
we need to let people know about the rebates, the programs. We talked about, and actually, because of me, did not approve a couple contracts last week at our council meeting that would increase PACE, which is energy efficiency programs, because I had a couple little details that didn't look right in the contracts to me. But those kind of things are tools that we should get out to people when they come in and start inquiring about a permit and doing a remodel
Yeah.
and things of that nature, that we can be on the forefront that wouldn't really affect the $300 or $3,000 permit fee, but would actually give them information to go back to their contractor with.
Yeah. Yeah, we've actually talked about that a lot and tried to, about how information about rebates and things like that, because there are some available. Even the federal government is still giving some, and there are some at the state level. But putting all that information, and PG&E is giving some too for energy efficient appliances and things like that, putting all that together in one place that is really easily accessible and that people can find out about it is really important to us. But it has seemed to us, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, that some of this has to be done at a step above us, maybe by the county or by the state. And they're trying. We haven't been real delighted with the availability of that information, but we really strongly feel people need to have it for sure.
Well, I have a comment. I was looking on the building permits page in the city of Brisbane. Oh, sorry. Sorry, is that better?
Just pull it down.
I was looking on the building permit page on the City of Brisbane website, and there's a lot of interesting information here, guidelines from building height, solar panels, and whatnot. So it seems like it would be possible to put something in here about, guidelines for conserving energy or information that the city is encouraging contractors to read, because they have to come here. Either they have to come down here to get a building permit, or they have to apply online, so they've seen this webpage. And that way there's some incentivized way for them to click through it and whatnot, information on rebates, but specifically sort of the guidelines that we're posting about conservation, both for commercial and residential.
And as education all the way around, yeah.
That's a good idea.
That would be a great place to put it. We already have the portal. We already have a place where they have to go.
Okay, that's a great idea. Thanks for that.
Good idea.
I think we've had these kind of conversations in multiple forums and over multiple years, and maybe it's time for us to really try and consolidate that. Because everything that's been said and everything Terry said, everything I think and we've talked about has been talked about in one form or another for many, many years. If we can't get outside entities to get it together, maybe we need to just do it ourselves.
You mean, are you talking about building a portal in Brisbane for that kind of
Getting
stuff?
the information that you're talking about, Michelle's talking about, Mary was talking about, we've all talked about these different things, and pile that information somewhere and get it, to our residents, even if we can't get it from, does that make sense?
Yeah, and compliments to council. We've always had a number of different part-time people doing something with sustainability, part-time staffing OSAC and part-time working with the building department, but we now have a full-time staff person, Adrian. And
Yay.
it's a lot easier to say, do that.
Yeah.
Go to the city's website and put it wherever it needs.
So
I just think it would be so beneficial to all of us at every level to really put some work in on that.
well, and also the people that we know in town that are doing the general contractors. I don't know if that's what Jerry Cool's title is or whatnot, but to make sure that the information, if he's not looking at the website because he already knows that he's been there, done that, that we're making sure they're getting that information too.
And that's maybe just having it at the counter.
That's what I was say, maybe just having an account and making sure someone mentions it. If,
Have it
you
at
know.
the counter, the City of Brisbane Facebook page, making blurbs about it whenever there's a public event. You know, occasionally just mentioning some interesting tidbit about the city website that we'd like people to see. You know,
One of the things that, and this is sort of going off track, but in the same vein, that we talked about was having a interactive display in our art room, in the large conference room, where we asked, whether it be, you know, high school students or grade school students, to do something on sustainability, open space, and energy conservation. Have them draw a picture of what it looks like. We have all seen What My Family Looks Like, or what, you know, they do the drawings of their family or the state of California, and we have displays. And so, you know, that's one of our third bullet points that we talked about in our meeting, was to have artwork showing climate change, sea level rise displays, and we could maybe even have, you know, what does a light bulb look like? And, you know, what should it look like? How can we save? And bring students into it, which brings their parents into it. As we all know, parents help with the homework. So I think that might be one way to get some of the information out in a playful way. And we also talked about having some of these displays maybe out at the marina, at the farmers market, at some of the events, concerts in the park, some of the events that we already do, not to put more work on the Open Space and Ecology Committee necessarily, but maybe some sort of citywide campaign or school-oriented campaign where we try to highlight some of the issues that are going on with open space and ecology and sea level rise, climate change.
So Megan and I, who are the education subcommittee, just talked about that yesterday afternoon, and we have several proposals to put before the Open Space Committee tonight. But maybe Megan, you'd like to report on what we talked about.
Well, and we know, I've just from the history of trying to work with the Littman, it's just hard to get that school grade enrolled. And we would like to continue to. I know it's getting into the end, close to the end of the year, so I think it's probably time for us to just kind of put that little nugget in there for them to think about at the beginning of the school year, so we can really get in there next year. But the other thing we were thinking, it was with the little ones, and we don't know if we go to the school district or maybe I left a message for Mothers of Brisbane, MOB, to get their input of maybe. Again, we think the same thing. You get the kids enrolled, the parents are going to be enrolled, especially if they're the little tykes. And we were thinking it would be really cute for a day in the park or a community festival for them to get dressed up as like a little electric car, or they got dressed up and each of them had a recycle hat on. You know, a different one had this is the blue bin. I'm all stuck papers all on them. You know, just little tykes with costumes and things like that, where they could have a lot of fun, and then we would get together a prize for the little ones. I think getting it on, because again, I mean, I hate to say we keep hitting our head against the wall with the junior high schoolers, but the times in the past we haven't been successful, and I'm very willing to go back out and reach out to them again. But we do think that the little ones would have a lot more fun. I mean, they get it in. We can't get these 14-year-old, 15-year-olds to think about it because they got their head other places. But the little ones, I think, just starting them off really young would be kind of fun to do.
And one opportunity we do have is we do run the Club Rec program. And that's something where it is a fairly robust and it's filled to capacity every year. And that is something that we may be able to get our recreational leaders involved in, that when they're doing a an art project or they're doing a science
Yeah.
project, that we get some involvement with that way. So it's,
I think that's great because it's like you said, get the adults and the youngsters thinking about it. So anytime they can think about it, any projects they're doing, hey, who wants to do something on, ecology? Who wants to do something on open space? And keep that thought process out there. I think will help. It'd be great for education.
yeah.
Did I miss anything?
We'll definitely explore that.
Yeah.
We've really concentrated on working with the schools, and as Megan said, we've tried actually to connect with them, but schools have a fixed curriculum, and adding extra things doesn't always fit all that well, and so it hasn't been as easy as we hoped it would be. So
Thinking of
try these
all-
other routes.
But this fits so nicely into their science fair stuff, so
Yeah.
why don't you attack it from that level?
Yeah, because we do always go to the science fair, and we have one of our people.
I don't think we did this year.
Oh, we didn't. That's
Yeah.
right. It was missed.
First year we
First
haven't
missed,
in many,
actually.
many years.
But we usually do, and then we actually give a prize. They win a certain certificate from us, whoever's done the most ecological. So it's a good idea, especially at the beginning of the time, like when they're starting to think of their projects, to go in instead of saying, oh, after, I don't know what we've done, but to maybe go in, hey, if you guys do this is what we do. This is what we'd love to have you get involved in. Maybe some of you think about this. We give a prize at the end of the year. Something,
Yeah.
have fun.
Hi, Claire. Okay.
So the subcommittee also, do we want to have Claire introduce herself?
Sure.
Since she missed that portion before we go on.
Hi, I'm Claire. I've lived in Brisbane for about 2 years now, and I'm excited to join the Open Space and Ecology Committee. I don't know what else.
Yay.
Welcome, Claire.
Thanks, Claire.
We also discussed the county and San Francisco's big oil lawsuit when we were in our subcommittee meeting. And I think that at this point, we were worried that we had enough legal issues on our plate and that there could be some areas that the current legal would have conflicts. Our current legal would have conflicts with the legal that is handling this for the city and county, and that at this point we would be better off being a little cog in the county's pursuit of this lawsuit and coattail off the possible windfall riches or no riches at all, and take our chances in that respect with the lawsuit and not join it formally because of the potential costs and the length of litigation. And so that was our recommendation, was to support the county as far as we could, but to not become a major party to the suit, more as a coattail party, if you want to.
We have a lot on that plate. I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
So, we talked about the acres and how important they are, and making finding out if there's a way to change how the open space map prioritizes parcels, and we felt it was very important. We'd like to see you continue working on that. I'm not going to go into details on how we thought that might work, because I think you guys coming back with more information to us on how you think we could prioritize, again, any acres that come up for sale, if they are offered at a reasonable rate, we have purchased as a council and as a city, using a variety of funds. We'd love if there were more funds available and more willing sellers.
Yeah.
So we still think that that's a very important goal for Brisbane and for open space. and I'm not sure if in our meeting notes we have it quite right, because I know that the OSEC sent a letter to us wanting us to, back them or make it a priority about Peking Handicraft and the Levinson property. And that we felt, and that you felt it was very important for us as a council to try to protect that area, purchase it, do something. And we do feel it's a very important area. We somewhat felt that we had a better shot at doing something in the acres just because it's the smaller bits that we can put into contiguous area with San Bruno Mountain. And the Peking Handicraft and Levinson are in a larger parcels with needing a lot more money to be able to do something about purchasing or retaining. We would love for you guys to reach out and see if you can find a conservancy group that wants to help us. We did not feel it would be in our city's budget to be able to do that as a city, to go after those properties. And we felt that there would be constraints if we tried to do it in a roundabout way, by some other method, other than some sort of purchase or negotiated sale or something like that. But even if we were to go in with a negotiated sale, it'd take a lot of money in one point or another. So while we don't say that they don't have benefit or that they're not worth preserving, because we definitely feel all of it is worth preserving, we didn't think that the resources were there. We'd love for you to still try to find a way, and we would be happy to help implement where we could, but we didn't think there was going to be enough financial support at the city level, funds available to be able to do much.
All right. Our, when we look at the budget of items that are available, there was a choice even before I became part of the city council, that the city council had to choose the most important items within our budget, and there were many, many things left out of that were already on the important list, and the Levinson property, Peking Handicraft, were not even on that list. Our safety items are huge, and more than 50% of the items that I would regard as being incredibly important relative to safety were not on the things that we deemed urgent at this point to spend money on. So that's way down on the list. We've got safety items that we could probably add another 10 each to that we still don't have the budget to do, and they are much more important than anything else that we can even come up with, safety being the first. So trying to find somebody who can bankroll that would be kind of nice.
Finding somebody who can bankroll that would be very nice. And I don't think ever intended for the city to necessarily bankroll purchasing the Peking Handicraft and Levinson properties. What we're looking for, I think, is support of that position as a city, and the value of that property as a linchpin connecting San Bruno Mountain and San Bruno Mountain State and County Park with public transportation, and as an area to have an interpretive center and have a learning center that's accessible to the public. And I understand about city finances. I've actually read the city budget. And I don't think that's what we were, at least personally, I didn't expect the city to go, oh yeah, we'll purchase that for you. Here's a couple million. Yeah, let's do it. That's not what was certainly not my expectation in bringing that forward as an agenda item. My hope was that we would have really heartfelt, dedicated city support for the idea of that area, of restoring that habitat, having it as a corridor to the mountain that is the closest place to San Francisco's public transportation and just public transportation in general, access point onto the mountain, and having some staff report and helping us seek those who do have that kind of funding to be able to fund a project like what we're envisioning, and that the city stands behind us in that and doesn't have other plans to make that, another something else. So that was, I hope that that you support, when you say you support us finding other funds for that is what you truly mean, is that the city does support a position of reclamation of that property as part of San Bruno Mountain's interface and habitat and opportunity to connect it to people through public transportation.
So I'll respond a little bit to that. While I can't speak for the entire council, this is just the subcommittee, and because Councilmember Cunningham is here, I won't speak for her. I would assume that if you wanted help as a committee to draft a letter or a statement that explained the importance and the general condition of the property, and that as a plan to make it open space, that I think the city would be able to help with drafting of that. I'm not sure as a city we can declare that open space is the best use for that property. We may have some things that we can't do in that respect, but as far as getting some sort of piece that we could help you draft to show the benefits of that property for various reasons, to be acquired by someone to do open space, interpretive learning, part of the county park, whatever the goal would be with that property, and whatever. And I think that each letter, if you had a specific funder that you're looking at that might be interested in doing that, each one would have a different way you are wording something to get that point across. So I think that if there was something we could do to help the committee or a citizens group to get that point across, we probably could give you that support and help. I'm not sure we could write a document saying that this is the highest, best use that would put us in a position of contradicting something that's a private land use.
Question. We don't really have the resources as a committee, and I don't know if the city staff have the resources to even search for a funder. Would you support staff devoting some time to trying to find a funder for this?
For myself, I would want to be able to say yes. It's not in our budget at this point to devote staff to it, and I cannot dedicate staff. I cannot allocate resources to a specific project without talking to staff about it.
And the rest of the
and I'm not
council,
sure of what amount of time. If you were to say, I think if we had 20, 40, 60, 80, whatever hours you thought that research would be needed or legal input would be needed you could bring that back to us as a council. We would be able to discuss it with staff and see if that was what the council as a whole wanted to devote resources to.
Okay.
I can't make that.
Sorry, I misphrased the question. I was more like trying to explain the problem that, even finding an outside funder is something that could take quite a lot of time and resources and access to funders' databases, which I don't have. I doubt if anybody else on this committee has it either. So if we were really going to try to go that direction, and that's really the only direction that we have available to us, I was just wanting to get your general take on how you felt about that.
And for me, I just wanted to make sure that if we do have an opportunity to pursue this, either through this or through, other community groups, that we wouldn't find ourselves at cross purposes with some grand plan of the city's.
I don't think the city has any grand plan for that property right now. I don't think it would be appropriate for Terry or I to say we would be okay saying we would devote staff time to this, because staff doesn't have any time to do the things that we want them to do at this point anyway. That's within the budget, but we can take it back to city council, and if the city council as a whole is interested in devoting staff time to pursuing this, then I guess it'll come back to you. But this is not a priority for the city council right now. When we looked at the budget and the things that we do not have time or resources to do that are mission critical relative to the safety of the people of Brisbane, we are way behind the 8 ball. We've got fire hazards all over the place, and they are our priority that we can't even fund right now.
Can I throw in staff comment?
Yeah.
One is that the open space plan from 2001 does designate those properties as a priority to preserve. So should there be a way, there's already a plan that says we would try to do that. They've been, identified and reviewed, and they are, that. But the other thing is that in the letter we talk about the priority conservation area, and staff and council approved us applying to the Association of Bay Area Governments for a San Bruno Mountain priority conservation area, and we included those properties. So one of the things that, there may be limitless different funding places to go that are better or worse opportunities, but we do know about the PCA grant that's coming forward, and as staff, I'd like to throw out there that I think we would form a committee when the grant opens and throw ideas around, but if there is any council might want to, and our liaisons might want to see what we come up with, but if there's any thoughts off the bat, we're interested to hear what a priority would be we're hoping that there's a priority conservation area grant funding that's, the round is supposed to be opening up. Well, it was supposed to have opened up in January, so we're kind of waiting to see what happens with that. So, and I don't want to put you guys on the spot. Definitely we can bring you a short list and then we could talk about it. But if you have anything that you say, oh, I know that this is a priority for me, we'd be glad to hear that.
Well, for me, if there's funding available and, we want to apply for a grant, I think that it is something that both the OSEC and the City Council should weigh in on when we know the parameters of the grant, the feasibility of getting something. And even if you have a project or parcel A versus parcel B, if one is more likely to get funded, even though that's less of a
Priority.
An urgent matter, you're going to go for the one that you think is going to fit those parameters for the grant, irregardless of its whether your first or fifth choice. If it fits the parameters and it's more likely to be funded, I would say, well, that's where you should go for the money, or get for the open space or whatever the project's going to be. So once that grant opens up, I'm sure staff will let us know, and we'll let you guys know. And at that point, we can cross that bridge and have a subcommittee. I personally would like to see the area conserved, but I can't speak for the entire council on that.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on, one of the requests that came in from Open Space and Ecology over the years was about courtyards in the Brisbane acres being, or virtually anywhere else, being considered part of the open space versus lot coverage or vice versa. And it was the committee's recommendation that that would go to the Planning Commission if that is something that the Planning Commission liaisons feel is something that would want to be addressed, that it would probably be better to be going through planning than through open space and ecology.
Okay.
And that that could be suggested if the council wants that to go to planning, that would be the better direction to take it.
We are requesting that the council ask the Planning Commission to review that.
Okay, well then we can bring that to the council to discuss if they want to, or perhaps the better way would be to refer it to the Planning Commission liaison to see if they want to bring that into the work.
Okay, yeah, that works.
Plan
'Cause
for Planning Commission.
at the staff level, we had been told that the planning planned to look at the Brisbane Acres zoning regulations as a whole, and there were things they wanted to update, and they wanted to incorporate our thoughts when they did that overall, and they'd been kind of busy with another big project until very recently. So, but we can definitely approach the liaisons and see if they feel like it's
I believe
time.
I'm one of them.
Oh,
So,
well, that makes it even easier.
There you go.
so I'm a little bit aware of that, but we have not had that Planning Commission liaison meeting this cycle yet. So now that we have some new Planning Commission members, we will be meeting with them and see what their priorities are for the year and what staff is expecting them to be able to do, and where their priorities are going to lie.
And just so you know, this has been on our list for 4 to 5 years.
No, we have the letter and the date that it was sent.
Yeah, and before that letter was sent, it was on our list that we were working through it. So, thank you.
So, one of the other letters that came was discussing landscaping,
Yes.
and that's aside from driveways, walkways, and
Structures themselves.
and structures themselves to not be covered by impermeable surfaces. Yeah, you can correct me. I can see you wanting to do it. And to encourage permeable driveways. It was felt that there's very few lots that this would really encompass, because we have so few empty lots at this point. I did think it was something that we could try to work into our code, but again, that should go to Planning Commission to try to work through that.
So similarly, is
Similar
council
direction.
willing to, we'd like to ask council to instruct the Planning Commission to work on it. And when we wrote that letter, just a little addendum here, what we had in mind was the increasingly common practice of people cementing their entire yards, which is, I mean, you can see that if you go to San Francisco and the Sunset. And I just read in the Chronicle the other day that San Francisco is actually trying to reverse course and encourage the planting of trees. And we just there have been a couple places in Brisbane where, you know, people have slapped swaths of cement all over the place, and we just didn't want that to continue for various reasons: temperatures, water drainage, habitat, and so forth. So we weren't just thinking about new places, but trying to discourage the practice on existing lots.
Yeah. Personally, my home that I purchased came swathed with concrete, and when we went to buy the place, my husband thought, "Wow, great, less maintenance." And so I can understand how there's differing ideas on that, and I also think, oh my God, just like the ivy front yard that came with my house, there is absolutely nothing I will ever be able to do about my house being concrete around, and it does raise the temperature, and you do feel it radiating off the concrete, but it's probably why I got a good deal on the house 30 years ago. But yeah, I feel for that, and I think that the less paving we can do, the better. But it would need to come through planning at this point, I think.
I think go ahead.
Again, the cat's kind of out of the bag. We've got a lot of concrete in Brisbane, so there's very few properties left to build within Brisbane. I think if we're going to talk about that, again, it's an educational thing. That, just like the lighting, that if we bring an educational perspective up to people, that, hey, if you're thinking of, renovating, here's your options, because I think a lot of people just don't even understand the options. I don't know the cost variance of these things, and I hazard we've only got a handful of properties left to develop in Old Town Brisbane. But yeah, we've got a lot of people who are putting in a driveway, and if it's another $20,000 or $30,000 and they can't put in their driveway, what are the cost differences here? Again, I don't want to discourage people from upgrading their properties, so we can ask the Planning Commission to look at it, but
it may seem like there's a lot of very few vacant lots left to build in Brisbane, but that's really not the case at all, especially with the proliferation and encouragement of secondary units on properties. So properties that are already developed will be seeing more and more development on those properties with the proliferation of secondary units. And the amount of lot coverage has increased dramatically in Brisbane with these mega mansions that are being built. And it leaves less and less ground to absorb water and to prevent runoffs. And the way that we currently manage the hydrology of Brisbane, we're not doing a good job with it. And that was the inspiration for having permeable pavement, if there's going to be such thing, and having people continue to have yards and have open space around their houses instead of just a concrete jungle. And so it seems like there's not a lot of property left to develop in Brisbane, but that's really actually not true, especially with the amount of infill and lot splitting that's going on. I saw numerous examples of that today as I walked around. I took a walk around Brisbane. And so I think we really do need to get ahead of it. And I think that unless you want, Brisbane just concreted over, we kind of need to, kind of make a stand and say, no, that's not necessarily a property improvement. It's an environmental unimprovement to pave over everything and force water down the city sewer system instead of into the ground where it can be absorbed and supply, water for trees and our aquifers. And it's a problem not just here, but across, the urbanization of the United States. But Brisbane's always been very forward-thinking in their ability to be able to see these problems and kind of try to solve them and get ahead of them. And I think that we really do need to look at this because more and more lots are being covered right up to the edges, and then those edges are being paved over. So it may seem like the cat's out of the bag, but the cat's not dead yet. So let's try to fix the problem. And that's why it came up in this committee of open space and ecology of our town. So I do think we do need to look at it, and be at the planning commission level, okay, but I think it needs to be addressed. Glenn did a lot of research on this, and we've spent a lot of time on it because
Actually, Barbara did a lot too.
we do think it's important.
And just to be clear, our intent was not to prevent anybody from putting in a driveway, and I'm pretty sure that our letter exempted, it said after driveways and structures and all these other things, that, X percent of the remaining square footage should be reserved for landscaping. So it's not our intent to force people to walk through the mud to get to their house or to park their car. That was not the point. And it's not our point now. It's just to keep people from swathing their whole lot in concrete.
Can I also throw in a staff comment? I believe when we discussed this, we talked about, so maybe there's a perception difference too, that this also would apply to an existing home on a lot, and then
Yes.
somebody wants to concrete their backyard.
Yes.
But I think I was supposed to check how many permits we get for that, because I'm hearing different things. That you are supposed to get a permit if you change the drainage of your property.
But they don't.
Right, but maybe not everyone's doing that. So is this a solution looking, is there a way to regulate it? If people aren't, I guess if people aren't getting permits and it's complaint driven, maybe we can, but I thought the feedback was to take it to the full council and have that discussion, so staff could do that if that's what the liaisons would like us to do at this point.
I think it's a good idea to bring it back to the council, and I agree that we should try to encourage as much greenscape as we can in landscaping, greenscape permeable surfaces. And I know that in our commercial areas, we do require on parking lots and things of that nature, and in our commercial areas, to have permeable surfaces. Isn't that correct? Some of the pavement, we've required permeable pavement, or they pay a different tax rate.
I hope so. I don't know the answer to that.
I'm pretty sure in one of the, and it's going back a couple of years, so, but with the NIPDs, they pay a different rate
Oh,
when they're permeable versus non-permeable.
well, the rates are pretty, the structure's pretty simple, so if it's an undeveloped lot, they pay a different price, but if you have a developed, completely impervious, you're gonna pay a higher rate, yes.
Correct. So we have some incentives at the commercial level to have rainwater instead of just runoff, to have absorption. But again, that's covered under our state regulations and may have a little bit more than just a recommendation from us. But I'm happy to bring it back to the full council and talk to them about it and see if that's something they want to make direction to the planning commission and or to staff to come up with something that they can think they could put into the regulations.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And I think the last thing we talked about in regards to your work plan that we talked about in detail was the tree request for an arborist for any tree removal.
Yeah.
And I think our discussion led us to obviously dead trees do not need an arborist.
Of course.
If they are dead, that there is no reason to require that. and that the staff was looking at trees a little bit more wholeheartedly now when someone does come for a permit, and that we did not want to necessarily grant landmark status to the eucalyptus and acacias, that we didn't think that was the point of what OSEC was looking for, was to make us not cut down the flammable matchsticks that grow in abundance here, that
Absolutely.
we were looking at trees with significant value, and that staff really felt that they were looking at that more, and that significant trees, that were being asked to be cut down, we were going to be asking for some sort of arborist and replacement. Correct?
Yeah, and you asked staff to look at the tree removal ordinance, and we've had one meeting, and the planning staff is going to come to the council with suggested changes to the ordinance, incorporating concerns they had and concerns in the letter. So that's in process.
Good.
Great, thank
Good.
you.
One thing we really wanted was for staff to consider the shade value of trees and in terms of their significance, because cities really, we're going to have a lot more heat waves like we did last summer, and the absence of big trees is really noticeable. I know there was one right across the street from me, and it's gone, and the sun is blazing harder through my windows than it was before, so we hope that gets factored in too.
So that's sort of what we discussed in our meeting, in our subcommittee on your work plan.
Okay.
And if there's something else that you want to bring to us now, comment-wise, or you'd like to bring to us after you've had time to digest some of our comments.
I would, actually. Karen, you mentioned you would like outside the box thinking, and I entirely agree. So I would just ask you, is there something that you would like to see us do along the lines of outside the box?
With regards to
Work plan projects,
I'm sorry.
work plan projects.
No, I think you've got a lot on this work plan, and I think there's a lot of other things that are, potentially going to be in the mix. No, I mean, I think you're going down a pretty right road, but I just want more thought processes. It's like, so far I've heard from Michelle and you, and very little from anybody else. I want more thoughts from other people, and it's really going to take everybody thinking really hard about what the issues are, and bring your thoughts up. You've got two very outspoken people on your committee. Everybody needs to be outspoken too.
I have a few, I don't know if it's out of the box, and I haven't been brought up to speed with all the different projects, but just listening to about the concrete issue, right? Putting too much concrete. Offer free trees for your residents. You can get those from the Department of Forestry. Going to PG&E, getting free light bulbs for our residents. People love free stuff. If it's going to get us to reach our goal, I think that's something that we do. It may cost a little money, but it will help the cause, and it'll get the message out there. And you keep doing it, people get educated, and people realize the benefits of having that extra greenery on your property. They realize how much they're saving by using energy-efficient light bulbs. But it's baby steps that will get you there. And, the bigger projects, that's going to take some time, and it's going to take a lot of money, understanding that the budget won't be able to purchase different pieces of land for open space purposes. But if the committee finds some grants that we can apply to that allows us to have more open space, then I think that's something we work towards as well.
Just one more question, speaking of money, unless you have anything you want to add. One thing that we've worked on, I know Barbara's worked on this pretty hard and staff's worked on it pretty hard, is a environmentally friendly purchasing guide. And, that applies to things that are bought by the city, things like paper and stuff like that. And you probably can't give a specific answer to this, but let me just say that some of the things that are more sustainable cost more money. And I'm just trying to get a better take on how tight the budget is. Is it going to prevent us doing things like that? 100% recycled paper, for instance, which is the better alternative, costs more than paper that isn't recycled. Do you have a take on?
I'll make a comment on that. Here's my paper for tonight's meeting. I wish everybody would adopt that same principle, including staff and all the committees and commissions, and the city council as well, to get a package of paper this big. I don't care whether it's recycled paper or not. You've got ink involved in that. We spend over $10,000 per year on paper for our signboard here in Brisbane that is not recycled paper.
Yeah, we've talked
and the ink
about
that goes on top of that. So
We talked about that recently, actually. with
Yeah.
Different
So-
things with the signboard.
So, for me, it's like, get rid of your paper. Get rid of the idea that you guys need to be coming to meetings with paper is a good start. If we can't start with our committees and commissions and our own city council and our staff, it's really hard for us to be trying to educate our citizens that they shouldn't be using paper and that we should be using expensive recycled paper when we don't need to.
Right.
So I feel very strongly about that, and I've been on this for about 6 years now.
So do we. We get email packets.
Good.
No, education is always the lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah, well, and the educational part of all of it for all of us is, one step at a time. It's like I've embraced this, Terry's embraced something else, you've embraced something else. It's just a whole educational package that we need to get out and be gentle with each other. But paper is definitely one of my things.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's,
From plastic.
I like writing and taking notes, but just because of what I have to do for a living, I end up using my laptop for most things. So definitely helps cut down on the waste.
Well, to answer your question, I know that we have implemented the sustainable buying practices, and I think probably our sustainability liaison person can probably tell you a little bit more if she's up on it, but I don't want to put her on the spot. The budget is not so dire that we are not abiding by what work we've done to reduce and reuse. And part of that was on an NPR program today, was refuse. So don't take the paper if you don't need it. Don't take the straw. Don't take the plastic bag. Refuse it. You don't need to bring another plastic fork every time. You can bring your reusable fork. But, those are all learning things. But to answer your question, I don't think that our budget is so dire that we can't implement some of the things that we've put in to our best practices. And I'm sure that we are doing some of the best practices, even though I know it costs a little bit more. So I will tell you, yes, even without the answer from staff, that I know that we are doing some of this.
Staff.
Yeah. Just a staff comment. There were a couple things I was going to talk about, and one of them was that we'd met with the county green building staff person that is trying to get more businesses to get certified as, green business certification. And we found out that municipalities can actually get certified as green businesses. So we looked at the whole worksheet, which Barbara Ebel had gotten her business certified for City Hall, and just we may not have told our liaisons before, and I know Karen, your new liaison, is that we've been working on a climate action plan training for staff about why we need to do what we do, and then what we need to do. And one of the slides is, how can we use less paper? What do you need? Do you training on using Adobe to keep comments, like training on a DocuSign, like what can we do to not have everything be paper? So that's definitely a goal. And if we do implement the climate action plan staff training, and we get solar on the roof of City Hall, we'll get over a lot of hurdles to be a certified green business. Another thing is that we would need to use 100% recycled paper, so we were looking at whether there is more cost if you one for one, but if we can use less paper, maybe we can do that within the same or even a lower budget. So we're working on that, and you will hear more about it.
I'm all over that.
And I'd just chime in a little bit. Karen mentioned the Countywide working group. We have recently created a subgroup to focus specifically on environmentally friendly purchasing guides or policies at cities, and there are a handful of other cities that are at various stages of creation of a policy or guide or implementation, measurement and verification. So I'm participating in that group. It is just getting started, but I'm looking forward to kind of hearing what other cities have had success with, and whether there are places where we can really strengthen our guide or better implement that guide. And I think the staff training is going to be a big part of that within City Hall in particular.
And thirdly, we understand we're going to get some intern resources, and that's one of the things that we had on a list to have them help us out with, is how to implement the environmental purchasing, and what do we need extra resources, or do we need extra training, or how do we do that? So we're working on it.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Anybody else on the committee want to ask anything? This is a rare opportunity we have to talk to our city council members, so speak up.
I do have one more thing. I just want to make sure that that you're, before we do a lot of work on it, that you are on board with the invasive species ordinance.
Good question.
Absolutely.
Okay. I saw many examples today where,
Excuse me, from me.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I
I'm not speaking for Terry, but I'm assuming, sorry.
saw many examples today along Kings Road and Humboldt, but particularly along Kings, where invasive ivy is climbing up ancient oak trees on private property, and that will kill those trees in short order.
Well, it's not just that, and that is super important. And
That's just one of the many
I'm
things.
spending an inordinate amount of time behind my property trying to get rid of the invasive ivy. I counted, and I'm not a plant expert like you guys, but I counted behind my home 12 invasive species. And when I walked the trails behind my own home on the fire trail, there are 12 different invasive species that are choking out natives. I don't know the names of all of the natives. I know they are natives that I've had enough experience looking at. And these English ivy, the French ivy, the broom, the this, the that, there were 12. I took photos of them, I looked them up, are destroying the native species on that part of the hill, which is heartbreaking to me. There is so much I can do, and I'm spending so much time just trying to take care of it. But it's not just that it's destroying the species. We have rodent problems in Brisbane now that we have never had before. Part of that obviously is because of all the construction in South City and the surrounding areas, so the rodent populations are being dug up and they're moving, so they're coming here. But if we are providing them a habitat, which the ivy does, the ivy is the perfect rodent habitat, it is destroying so many other things that we have. So getting rid of the invasive species all over Brisbane, again, an educational thing I think that we could be working on. If people don't know, they don't know. What we don't know, we don't know. I didn't know that the ivy
that wasn't even that invasive on my own home was really going to be, such a harbor for the Norwegian roof rats that are about a foot long.
Huge.
So what we don't know, we don't know. So that whole education again across the board.
And I'm hoping with maybe the new committee members that we have here that will come up with some new ideas for education, because we continue to educate. We put it out there in the media. We put it out there in all our different avenues, and we go to Day in the Park. Not one person came up. We had every kind of invasive species there were. That was last year.
We might need to ask the lovely Caroline in the city to, put it on the blog, because
she has
photos. Visuals are a really big learning tool.
We have a really nice Don't Plant a Pest brochure that we distribute. We just sent out a letter to, I don't know how many nurseries, about 30.
28.
And not asking them not to sell invasives. So we've really kind of racked our brains in terms of how to get the word out about this problem.
So, in response to Michelle wanting a commitment that we back your invasive species project that you're working on, I can't give that in a specific form because I don't know how you are proposing to implement it. Mm-hmm. And we talked about it, and I'm not sure if it was in this subcommittee or we had talked about it before, where we're going to sort of draw the line in the sand, if it's encroaching into a neighbor's yard, if it is butted up against open space, if it, those kind of things, and how the implementation and what the impact would be on people where, we're going to be the backyard police.
Yeah.
And so while I'm sure that some degree of invasive species implementation guidelines will be, we'd love you to work on it. We'd love to get less invasives being planted and and have them be controlled and have them not be a fire hazard. Where that actual text comes down and how it's going to be implemented, I can't give you a guarantee of unlimited support. I can't do that till we see what you're going to bring forward to us, and I wouldn't expect you to give that to us now because it's not in this purview to have that discussion, but it is something we all realize that invasive species are something we don't want here and we want to control. How we do that and what kind of forcefulness we need to use to do that, to get compliance, I'm not sure where we're going to go with that.
We understand that. Even now we have enforcement issues on laws and ordinances and agreements that have already been made. We have enforcement issues like where someone's supposed to replace, 3 trees that they took out. Nobody follows up on that. It's not done. Somebody's supposed to do this or do that. Enforcement's already an issue on agreements for variances and things like that. So we understand that. But at least if we have something on the books, we have an opportunity to, take action if we need to after the education period.
That's all something that, we would need to look at and see where the impacts were and bring it through, once you're done with it, through planning, through the implementation, through to the city council to figure out how that ordinance is going to be written and how it would be affected. So,
and the economic impact of those affected by it.
Yes.
I live on Kings and my property is covered in ivy. And unfortunately, removing it would be expensive, and then I'd have to put something else in. And there's been so many other things in terms of fighting erosion that have been more important. A lot of people on the Hill have the same problem.
Yeah.
At least it's currently a ground cover, and it's keeping things from sliding.
The oxymoronic part of ivy is that it seems to be an erosion control when actually it causes more erosion.
Yeah, it tends to dig into things.
Yeah.
The light's on.
Yeah, it's
No, it's not.
Now it's back on.
You just need to speak up.
Sorry.
No, I understand.
It's accused me of being too quiet.
It's a huge issue. It's a huge issue, Ross, and this is why we're treading lightly on it and trying to get a handle on it and trying to pull it down off the mountain, starting from the top and working our way down. And I know you didn't plant it.
No one would willingly plant it. It's like mesquite. No one would willingly plant it.
Right.
But there's a cost associated with removal and replacement.
Yes.
That's something we'd have to consider.
So one thing we maybe should think about, the invasive species ordinance that I've been thinking about is model after the one they have in Florida, where property owners are given the responsibility to remove invasives from their property, because if there's any place that invasives are worse than here, it's Florida. They just have horrible problems. It's really visible. But at the habitat restoration on Saturday, Megan brought up something interesting, which is, that maybe we could form volunteer squads to help people remove invasive species from their yards, so that, and see if we could get some takers, and then maybe find some way to
and give them. Well, this was one of the things actually I was going to bring up. So my neighbor and I were sitting down talking with Glenn about this on Saturday after we worked on removing so many French broom and Scottish broom. And as we were sitting there after, we actually went over and did our neighbors 2 doors down, 3 doors down for me that same afternoon, because we had the tools and we were like, good. Oh my gosh, we took so much Scotch broom and French broom. So it was just one of these conversations we had, and we go, well, let's go do our neighbors. So we immediately did our neighbors, and we go, what would we do to incentivize? And her daughter Natalie, Ellen's a new citizen in town, just purchased a home, but her daughter Natalie actually made this glass with 2 different etchings for us to kind of choose from. We were thinking about if anyone does help, that we're, invasive free, or we don't know what the saying would be, but to actually give them a plaque they would have with a star, and I was looking at a butterfly or something. So Natalie made these up, and she'd be willing to make them up for people as some sort of a nice incentive to say, we've done something, we've actually taken care of it, instead of here's another letter, here's another thing you have to do. It's like, how do we get other people involved? I did it again today. Another gentleman, I cleared out all of the weeds in his backyard. He's 90 years old and he can't do it. So I don't know. I'm just in a weed mode these days.
Megan. So instead of lead certification, we could have like weed certification. That'd be a little plaque.
So we actually, it was just really cute, because Natalie wanted to make sure she drove me here today so she could have this little etchings that she does. She does beautiful etchings. So,
well, I think that goes along with the G3 gardening that has sprung up as a self-help group to do beautification and planting. And I remember at one point being invited to someone's house for a gardening party, not a garden party, a gardening party. And it wasn't a gardening party. It was, will you help me remove blackberries?
Construction equipment.
You're well fed for that.
I had a gardening party once. It's very fun.
And so those are great ideas and things that can be looked at and try to be arranged. It's a citizens volunteer kind of thing. The city, I'm sure, could help in some way with rewards or recognition. I was at a friend's house who bought a house in Millbrae, and he had an old sign that came with the house that he got a Millbrae Best New Garden Award, 40 years ago, and they still have the little wooden plaque in their backyard. Now, looking at it now, you wouldn't think, oh, this is the best new garden in Millbrae, but it's something that sold with the house. And the gentleman who was gardening in the backyard felt proud, and the city felt proud. So there are some kind
That's kind of what we were thinking.
Yeah, recognition would be good.
To bring forward that are great ideas, and we don't have time for them all tonight, but I'm sure you guys will work on it in the next year.
Well, on a more practical nature or note, if we wanted to form community groups to help remove invasive species from yards, is there funding to help pay for replacements for those who would love to get rid of blackberry bushes or ivy, but they simply can't afford to go spend thousands of dollars on new plants or ground cover, or however much it might cost? I mean, is that a program we would want to try to push?
I am sure there is not funds to give thousands of dollars worth of plants to people. And I'm sure that there's ways to do it without spending thousands of dollars on replacement plants.
Oh, probably just something on the website that says these are the cheapest. These are the lowest cost alternatives.
I think, being one of the founding members of G3, there's probably 1,000 things that can happen at the community level rather than putting the burden on the taxpayers. So maybe if there are interested parties, they could meet with the
G3 people,
the boss of G3, of whom I am not. And one of the things that we have done as G3 is, my backyard is a private nursery for planter boxes that are going out for free. So I'm sure there is other members of our community who would be willing, or at least have those discussions. I don't think it's something that needs to be part of the city council. As a community group, it's a good community project. Personally, I'm planting mint instead of ivy. It has the same kind of thing, and rats hate it, by the way.
Do they?
Good to know.
They do.
So you're putting it in the ground?
I do.
Oh boy.
It's invasive, though.
It is.
But lesser than that. Lesser to
rats. So, I mean, there's a lot of, there's a lot of,
We'll have more discussions.
And there's a lot of people willing to do massive propagation.
Yeah.
And then pass it along. I mean,
And we do have
Mission Blue Nursery was.
Mission Blue Nursery. I was just going to say that. We have Mission Blue Nursery, so.
But our plants don't come cheap.
So one things that I did want to say is that while G3 is a citizens group, the city of Brisbane has offered a small token amount of financial support to G3. That does not mean that we pay for insurance or, major things, but as a token, we have supported it. And I think on that kind of scale, again, as a token reward or thank you or with it contribution that the city could be willing partners with that kind of group at a low level. We have a small discretionary fund that, if there's a project that's really going to show benefit, and you have a small budget within your group, again, when a project comes up, like a canyon cleanup where we need outside contracted labor, you would bring that project to us as a council, and we can fund it, or we can't, or we don't. And, everything has its value, and its value to the community. And those are all things that I think all of us on the council are willing to look at when something comes up that may need funding, may need to come out of reserves, if there's a benefit that we can really see, we try to help if it's feasible and possible. Just like if an acre came up today, we would probably find a way to fund it. It's a little harder to say we'd, fund acquiring 100 acres. But, as a one-off and as an ongoing community benefit, the council usually can find a way to do something if they feel it's the best benefit for, what service and what project we're funding.
Along those lines, I'd just like to really publicly thank the council for their support for the ivy removal in Firth Park and Costanhas Canyon and Lower Sierra Point Canyon. I one of the reasons I took that walk today was to specifically go down through Costañas Canyon from the top down. And I recently went up through Firth Canyon, and it's just a miracle to see the upper ivy, the ivy gone out of Costañas Canyon. I mean, 6 years ago, I would have said this canyon has so little chance of surviving, but we started to work pulling the ivy off of the big trees and clearing as much as we could and coming back and doing it again the next year. And then to have the support for the city to come in and take care of the parts that were too steep and dangerous for volunteers to do, and to walk through that canyon today and see the upper part of the canyon just cleaned of ivy. It was just like a miracle. So it really does make a difference, reclaiming our canyons and, reclaiming, and yes, I saw a lot of ivy today, invasive in other places, but, I've also seen a lot of progress at one step at a time. Those canyons were lost to us. They would have been completely lost to us by now if we had not intervened.
There can be a bright spot.
Yeah.
The council appreciates the feedback when a project is something that works and it can be sustained, and it's going to keep. We have to keep on top of things. Once you start them, you've got to keep up on them. So.
Oh, absolutely. That's the hard part too. You can make it great and make it look good, but then you have to continue to take care of it. It's like getting a pet.
Just a quick staff update that we had funded restoring Firth Canyon, and the contractor was actually able to do it under budget. So then we had them go over to Costaños, and they did what they did there. They didn't take out all the ivy, but there was an interest in getting the ivy off the trees in the lower Sierra Point Canyon, so they finished up there. And I think there's still a tiny bit of money that may be able to take the ivy off the trees in upper Sierra Point Canyon. And we also were able to fund the plants from Mission Blue Nursery that we replanted at the bottom of Costaños Canyon. So it's just, we did propose in the budget some money to buy plants to continue to do planting days and add that to a habitat restoration day, with the caveat that we do need the weather to agree, because it's difficult to water those, and if they're not getting rainwater, it's going to be hard for them to establish. But we put a little bit of money in to see if we could continue to do planting days like that. It was very well received, I understand.
Yep.
Well, that's always a benefit when we can come in under budget and actually increase the scope of work, because that's so unusual to have in any government kind of program that people are willing and work hard enough, and it's a great testament to our staff and to our contracted labor for them to do that, and I think that's really good. We should have that happen more often. That's a very good thing to have happen.
And sing it from the highest mountain.
Yes, good job.
A couple other staff things I just wanted to bring up, and they may be news to the committee too, but on the work plan, one of the things we are trying to work on is solid waste. Can't see that, Adrian, it's too small. And a couple of things we put in the budget were adding recycling containers on Visitation Avenue. So the council will see that when the budget hearings happen, but we were thinking of smaller containers, but that match the ones that are there, so they're concrete, but they'd be identified with blue lids and blue markings that they're recycling, so that we can kind of start people thinking about separating. And then we're also proposing an enclosure in the park, small enclosure, so that we would have the ability to recycle at the park. So the feedback we have is there are a couple recycling containers there now, but when there are events and people create a lot of waste, they just put everything in everything because there isn't enough. So if there were an enclosure close by, they could bring their excess trash, and they could also put their recycling in separate containers that could be picked up. So we're proposing that, and we wanted you guys to know that you might hear about that. Hopefully we'll be hearing about that at the budget hearings.
Great, thank you.
We're also talking about at the committee level an adopt a spot program that's like a volunteer trash pickup. Like, I want this area to be my area, and we'll give you pickers and bags and vests, and then you can let us know that you've picked up a bag of trash, and Public Works can come and dispose of it if need be. And we hear a lot about Quarry Road in certain areas, and Crocker Park, and Crocker Trail, and a number of different spots, and we wanted to pick. We're looking at spots that are safe, not necessarily like with traffic issues, and where people might want to adopt an area and keep it clean.
Karen, could you maybe talk to Randy and coordinate that with the old Adopt a Drain program as well?
Right.
I own a drain and I have
Yes.
a rake, because I think it's hand in hand. And I don't think the Adopt a Drain program, which would totally work hand in hand with that, has been talked about a lot over the last
Right.
few
It's
years.
been. I've heard that it's kind of been like,
But,
inactive, although
I
people have their
own
rakes.
Tulare Street, and when it rains, it really does make a difference when you can get down there and, and again, it's an educational thing. If people don't know, people don't know.
Right.
I just run down to the first sign of rain, and if there's any trash, it comes out, and I take it. It really has been very useful on my street,
Yeah.
but we haven't talked about that a lot for years.
So,
A couple of years ago, I called everybody on the list, and everyone I talked to said they still clean their drain.
That was me. You talked to me.
I did talk to you.
I clean my drain.
Yeah, so I did reach out, and it has been a few years, but then, so that was the overall, was like, let's see how it's going, and the people, it was overwhelmingly, yeah, I still clean my drain, so that, but I'll revisit that for sure.
There was something came up in the last few weeks, and I can't even really remember what it was, but it was like, what is the best way to get information out? From my perspective, it is every which way we can and as often as we can about everything. And it's not hard for us to have a list of things that Carolyn can put up every Friday on her blog. If people don't know, people don't know. And, even if today you read it and you forget about it in 3 months, if we just keep putting things out, that educational process is going to get through to more and more people. But we've got to hit it at every angle, whether it's on the notice board, whether it's via email, whether it's, in the bills that come out, the water bill, whichever way. We need all these great things to be in our face all the time for people to get it. I mean, I bet you 90% of people in Brisbane don't even know there's an Adopt a Drain program, I would think, at this point.
Right. Yeah, we hear you. We can do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I'll
think
get it
we're
myself.
bringing that back in the fall. We're Jerry and Bob and Maria and I were actually wrapping it up, the budget, taking part of the budget out for when they do the green waste big containers and wrap it up in that, and starting to promote it in the fall and bring it back. And we're investigating the rakes and doing the whole star and making it special.
Yeah, I mean, on San Bruno Avenue, where Tulare hits San Bruno, just north of that, there's somebody who, on a regular basis, empties their cigarette butts into the gutter.
Ugh.
And I'm out there. I cannot tell you how many times I've been out there, but I want to get out there with a camera. So the more people who are aware, every one of those cigarette butts ends up, in our ocean. So again, just getting the information out often.
Well, actually, we shouldn't say that, because I think 90% of those cigarette butts are supposed to get captured in our trash
In
diversion
collection
things that have to
bays.
be cleaned out.
Right.
So
Right.
we don't just let them go down to the ocean, but yes.
Yeah.
They're pretty new, right? Those
Trash.
what are they called? The
Trash capture devices.
trash capture devices. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have those, and I used
Uh-huh.
to watch them go down the drain, and it was very.
Well, they would go
distressing.
down the drain. They just get trapped before they
Under
go
there.
to our sewer and
The
stormwater.
devices, yeah, have only been installed in the past 4 years and
Yeah.
staged.
And Keegan Black will discuss this at our next meeting.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
that's right, Keegan.
yeah, we talked about having him come and talk about what's going on in the program, and then we said for this adopt an area, what are the hot spots? And he's got that map, and he's going to share that with us. So
Great.
good. So I think that's all staff had. We're glad to hear that you're in support of our work plan in general, and you've given us some more specific direction. And I think there's lots to do.
Rat poison on.
Yeah.
Oh, so we had a little, could you put the list up on the screens again of additional measures?
Additional further up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen?
Rat poison ban.
The rat poison ban, I don't know whether that's something we at a local level can actually have any power over, but I know what we do have power over is I sent the photo of the beautiful owl that was picked up by a lady who, the owl died later from rat poison that he'd eaten a mouse. And then, of course, I had two beautiful red-tailed hawks live behind my house, and now we only have one for the same reason. So again, education via visuals and all of that kind of stuff. I don't know whether we can institute a rat poison ban. I mean, I would totally personally feel for it. I don't know whether the city council would feel that way, but I mean, certainly, again, the education of it and the unintended consequences are going to be our children, our dogs, our cats, all the wildlife, the birds.
Yeah.
You know, and I see my lone red-tailed hawk now. She doesn't have her friend anymore.
Something on that? There has been a bill introduced to the state legislature which would ban it statewide, and you're totally right. It makes much more sense to ban it, because if we were to ban it locally and you could still go to Daly City and buy it.
No, you can still go to Lowe's in South San Francisco and get it.
Yeah.
Wherever, yeah. So this is, for anybody interested in it, it's SB 2422, I think is the right number. And it was yesterday supposed to be heard by the Water, Parks, and Wildlife Committee in the California State Senate. I checked at the end of the day yesterday, and there was no change on leginfo.gov, so I don't really know whether they had the hearing. The hearing was rescheduled once. It was supposed to be on the 13th, and it was yesterday. So I don't know if they had the hearing, and if so, what happened to it. But that's something, if you're interested in it, you know, you could support that. 2422, I think. If you email me, I'd be happy to send you what I have about it.
Oh, I just really want to read lots more SBs.
Well, just, you know, with the names of the committee members that you could contact if you want. And there's also an organization called Raptors Are the Solution, or RATS, that does a lot of work on this issue. So, and we've worked on public education, and we'll work on it some more.
But if we did pass an ordinance, it'd be great, because then we could let all of the businesses in the industrial park know, and all of the people in town know that we have an ordinance against using this. Just like when we took a stand about using, you know, Roundup. And yes, people will bring it from elsewhere and probably try to use it, etc. But at least if we have made a statement that it is illegal because it is so dangerous.
Isn't our Roundup bill that only any city contractors can't use it? It's not that local residents can't use Roundup, because I think it's still for sale in our
but the contractors in the industrial park don't use it anymore.
But those are just because they are contracted by the city, through the city, I believe.
I don't know.
So I'm pretty sure we don't have an out-and-out ban on
No,
Roundup.
we don't. I wish we did. We should.
And it's easy to regulate ourselves as a city, to say, as a city, we are not going to do or use something. It's another to go on our own for an ordinance, just like the plastic bag ban. We use the county resources to write the ordinance and take the legal flack for it so that we didn't have the cost and the responsibility legally. We supported the county. We went along with it, but we used their template, let them go first, so that we didn't have the same costs and expenses. So, again, if there's something in the works for the state and we can support that, whether as city government or as individuals, that would be much better than us trying to go it alone for enforcement and for legal reasons.
I think we as a committee decided last meeting or a couple meetings ago that we were going to wait and see what happened with the state bill before we revisited the issue. But that brings to mind a question, and this is a general question. There are quite a few things like rat poison and things like that it makes sense to regulate at a higher level, the county level or the state level, rather than in Brisbane. We're just too small. We don't have the enforcement resources. I know for the plastic bag ban, one of the issues was if we'd done it on our own without the county, we would have had to do an EIR,
right.
environmental impact report. So is there a way that the council, does the city council have a way to recommend things at the county level? That say, we find this is a problem in our community, but it's bound to be a problem in other communities, invasive species, for instance. Would the county consider legislating on this issue? Can our city council do that?
Well, I'm sure that our city council can go through appropriate channels through whether it be ABAG or CCAG or whatever acronym might be the responsible party, or to have the ear of someone on at the county level or the state level. But how you'd go about that and how you get something initiated, I think it's a matter of networking and finding out that there's something at the state level that we can try to join in, we can try to support, we can try to make those phone calls, but I don't think there's, a clearinghouse for the county wish list.
But it might be appropriate for us as a committee to say, here's this thing, would the council be willing to pursue it at the county level or the state level or whatever?
Again, there's only so much time and resources that we have as a council and staff has. And so everything needs to be sort of looked at in where are we going to put our ask or our favor or our time or our money. And so all of those need to be weighed.
Of course. It's just in certain cases it might make more sense to go that way rather than try to regulate it locally ourselves.
Of course.
Well, if something comes to the city council that's pretty well prepared, it makes it a lot easier to make a decision, for sure.
Okay.
I did want to just mention one potential avenue for state legislation. I'm not sure if I ended up getting to inform the committee about this, but Senator Hill has an annual It Ought to Be a Law contest. I believe it is in January. And so anyone from the community, from anywhere in his territory, can submit to him ideas for things that they would like to see be state legislation, and he selects one every year that he tries to move forward in the legislature. So maybe another avenue for committee members who have pet projects that they'd like to see move forward at the state level.
There you go. There's your answer.
Good answer for the rat poisoning ban.
Yeah. Yeah, you did tell our subcommittee about that. I don't know if you've told the whole OSEC.
I haven't heard of it before, so thank you.
Might be good to put that on our calendar, though, in like November or something.
Or we probably should find out when they're due, because he chooses in January. This means they're probably due in November. I would guess.
If I'm remembering correctly, when we looked it up in January, we had just missed the deadline.
Okay.
So I will confirm and put that on the
Thank
committee's
you.
annual calendar.
Okay, perfect.
So, no, I mean, there are a couple things on this list we haven't touched on, but we've talked to the committee about, and the committee and the liaisons about the festival tree and planning for another tree in another close by location. And, textile recycling, we've talked about, and it does require some resources, and we got a lot of other things on our list. So unless somebody's saying, I want to do this year, maybe we just kind of carry that one over.
Yeah, and plus we found other locations where they can recycle textiles, so.
So I think we've covered what I was hoping that we would cover, and we've got some good feedback, like I was saying before. So I want to thank the council liaisons for coming to the meeting and talking to all of us.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Can I ask a question about the Christmas tree?
Sure.
Why do we want to move the Christmas tree?
I'll answer this. The Christmas tree that we have is not going to last much longer. It's not a well tree, and
It's not a well tree.
It's not
no,
doing well.
and it was
Fake branches on it this year to fill it out.
They did. Did you not know that?
very
You did a really good job because you
notice
did
that.
not know.
And it
all
was
of a sudden it looked
recommended
so full, and then
by-
they started to die.
It was recommended by Sean Sweeney, a former committee member, 4 years ago, that we start planning and planting a new tree that will get big before this one has to come down. And this one will come down by itself eventually.
Why is this tree dying?
It was the wrong species for this. It really, unfortunately, I mean, it was beautiful when they first planted it, but
There's always cattywampers, though.
Because
it's
of
not
the wind.
suited for where it is and the purpose it is and how it was planted and the water table, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Some issues with how it was.
So our plan is to plant a new tree nearby and let it get big while this one, limps along.
At the end of its life.
It just becomes a play structure.
Right.
And or we, remove it at some point and have,
Another
community bonfire and
Okay, got it.
when the new tree's big enough.
Do we have
So-
a species picked out for the new one yet?
No, that's part of what Megan and I are on the subcommittee to
We
do.
just keep getting that one that's there is the right one.
No,
So we're still
That'll probably be a
researching.
4-year argument.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it will be a
It's been already 4 years.
It has.
it has been, and
We're
we
getting
need to make
closer,
some
though.
serious recommendations on different species of trees that would be more suitable.
A good friend of mine does this for a living, so he'd be happy
perfect.
to donate his time to
You
do
know
this.
what?
We would
There
love
is
for
a
him to come
space on
see.
that committee that you can take.
It's a subcommittee. It's perfect.
Got it.
Yeah.
We would love
I mean,
to have the
it's
help.
not like we don't love that tree.
I just had to ask the question.
No, I know.
Not the right
You're like, what?
The answer.
So we've got a couple other regular OSAC items of business, and I don't know how late we'll go, but we do at least want to approve the minutes and all that. And I would say you guys can stay, or you may go at your wish.
I think I'll go. I have surgery tomorrow morning.
Oh, good luck. Oh,
Oh,
my
good luck.
gosh.
And I think I will let you get on with your business, and thank you very much for sharing the work you've done with us and for your future and past dedication.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get rid of Ivy.
Yeah.
You're here.
You can have a gardening party at my house.
And mine.
We got water and you didn't.
I'm just dying of thirst. I'm going to
Oh. Approval of minutes. Thank you.
There's 2 glasses, so I can offer that. Whoops.
This one hasn't been drank out of.
Oh, I'm good. I'll get a coffee, thanks.
Thank you very much. I didn't bring my little tea thing tonight. Thanks, Megan.
I move to, you can water the plants outside with it. I mean,
Don't start. It's okay.
I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Did everybody have a chance to take a look at them?
Mm-hmm.
I did, yes.
I
But
second
wasn't
that.
there, so.
All approved?
Aye.
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 Okay, the minutes are approved. Moving right along.
So let us know, in the interest of time, do you want to look at the subcommittee list and consider if new people want to join subcommittees, or do you want to do that next meeting, or?
I think if we do it next meeting, we can discuss more about what the subcommittees are, and then people would have a
Right.
better idea what they were,
That's a good idea.
signing on for. In the meanwhile, they can kind of look at it and kind of, say, oh, that looks interesting, or, well, now you know what the tree replacement committee has to do, Ross.
Well, how about,
So,
Yeah, how do our new members feel about
Oh,
that?
right.
Would you like to,
so yeah, we're missing,
yeah, find out more and,
Next meeting is fine. We can talk about it in between, presumably, right?
yeah.
as long as it's not a majority of members.
Right.
And you can always probably review prior meeting minutes and stuff like that and get an idea of what the committees do.
Yeah, I was going through the website.
And
one thing that would be really good, Adrian, is if you could update and publish to the committee members our contact information so that different members can contact other members if they have questions about any of these things, etc.
Yeah, so we did do a little orientation with Mary and Ross, and I went over what the subcommittee did at the meeting last time that Claire was at, so I hope you guys have, maybe we didn't talk a lot about subcommittees in the orientation, but I hope they have some idea of what we do. And I do want to take this opportunity to just re-mention about the Brown Act, and when I said not a majority of you emailing each other, that you don't want to have a virtual meeting by discussing subject matter in a
Right.
group that's a quorum or more. And we do, it is easier, one way to kind of prevent that is if you have items that you want to talk to a majority of members about, send it to staff sends it, and we say, don't discuss an email, because then you're not offering the public a chance to know about what you're discussing or deciding. But yes, we've talked a little bit with, I realized when Claire came on and she knew nothing that we were talking about, I should introduce the other new members to what we do a little bit. So we talked one Wednesday night for a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Great.
So I think we can have up to 3 members on a subcommittee and not have to have an official publicly open meeting. So we have room to grow some of these.
Speaking of subcommittees, I'm not sure we want to do this now, but I was thinking, listening to the discussion tonight, that I wonder if it would be a good idea to have a permanent liaison with Parks and Rec.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because, to pick up on educational opportunities, we sort of need to know what they're doing, right? And have somebody there to make those suggestions about, well, if we're having an art contest, could there be a sustainability dimension to it? So we may not want to decide that tonight, but I put it out as something we might want to think about.
Yeah, and we'd have to ask on their
We'd
end.
have to ask them if they're okay with it, but
We do seem to be having a lot of crossover.
I mean,
Yeah.
I really liked the idea of rec programs. I don't know why we didn't think about that in terms of doing our kid activities that are related to sustainability. That could be a good resource
yeah.
for us.
I can get them started early.
Do you want to talk about that?
About the
Yeah.
The Park and Rec department has asked if we would like to have 2 subcommittee members to participate with their subcommittee on replacing the signboard. So that is one area of overlap that they are already planning a subcommittee in.
That and the
requested our
Christmas
participation.
tree and habitat restoration. I mean, there's a lot that we kind of cross over.
Well, we do with habitat restoration.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah, that would actually be something I'd be interested too.
Cool. Great. I'll volunteer.
So,
I think it depends on what what the subject matter is, or unless you think we should have permanent one. permanent
permanent
ones
ones.
and then
Yeah, that,
subcommittees is subcommittees. I don't know.
no, right. To clarify, this was about moving forward on,
The signboard.
right,
The signboard.
Right.
and whether there's a more sustainable alternative that makes sense with all of the other factors
So-
that are.
That's something. So Parks and Rec is responsible for the signboard, and they want to replace it with something else. They're just trying to figure out what.
Yes.
So what I
Well,
had
don't
in
know
mind
if
was,
if I could say they, some members at least we know are. I'm not sure if it's a unanimous or not position.
so what I had in mind was a permanent liaison to them to discuss, I don't know, signboard and festival tree and all these things, you know, to bring it back to us as needed, rather than ad hoc subcommittees all over the place. I don't know, I just think that would be a better arrangement, but that's just my idea, so.
So let's put it on the agenda for next meeting to discuss.
Sure.
And maybe we should also have permanent liaisons with the planning commission.
I can ask. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
What do you think about that?
How do subcommittee assignments work? Like, what's the process for that?
In terms of OSAC subcommittees or
OSAC
joint,
subcommittees.
you guys decide who you want to be on your subcommittees.
Got it.
So I guess if there's disagreement, it would be by majority vote. Typically, I think we've had consensus in discussion.
It's
I don't remember any fights.
If you don't want to be on a committee, step backwards.
Until you hit the wall, right?
They really vary a lot, though, in terms of what the, you know,
What you
how often
like,
they
what you
meet,
wanna
whether they're
do,
seasonal or not. So I know that the Education Outreach Committee has been pretty regularly active, and the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee has been very regularly active. But some of them, you know, are not very active until it's the right season or something like that. So it's
Right.
kind of hard to generalize about them.
Right.
Right, and some have been waiting for staff to bring them some information to work through, so.
What is the 280 South Hill Funds ad hoc?
So that is, the money from the sale of the funds,
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah,
from the sale of the
I
property.
wouldn't call it the 280 South Hill Funds, but
Oh,
Yeah.
well, so
Okay,
Kima,
I know
Kima
what
had
it is.
been the OSAC representative, so he's still gonna work on what we can do with the Firth Park Trail, but he can't be the OSAC representative, is not being an active member anymore.
right.
Oh, I remember
Okay.
now, yeah. Okay.
All right. Should we move on?
Yeah, any more discussion about subcommittees? Okay. Staff updates?
Do we want to talk about the calendar items first?
Oh,
I just wanted to briefly mention, and this is kind of between calendar items and staff updates, folks had requested last meeting to confirm the date of Day in the Park, and that is going to be October 6th, the first Saturday of October. So that is now on the calendar here for you. And then just another kind of note about an upcoming calendar item is that Bike to Work Day is coming up quickly on May 10th.
right.
And we still have
Do we have people who are working on Bike to Work Day? I don't remember. Anybody?
Barbara and I both volunteered to go in the morning.
Oh, okay.
I'll
Great.
be going as well.
Thank you.
Yay.
any of the new members want to go, they're welcome to go. Like to work
You
day.
wanna tell 'em what it
quickly
is?
explain what it is?
I actually haven't been at one of these, but I know what they are, so I can give just a brief overview. On Bike to Work Day in the morning, I believe they start at 6:30 a.m. until 10 a.m. There are Energizer stations around the community. There are 2 hosted in Brisbane, where bicyclists can get snacks or refreshments, and they get a bag for participating in Bike to Work Day. It's just kind of a nice little motivational thing, and we need volunteers to support that.
Just kind of man the booth, hand out the food, just woohoo, cheer people on.
As long as I don't have to be on 2 wheels, I'm just kind of a menace.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that we need to pay attention to on that?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Any other staff updates?
Can we add the Senator Hill's? It ought to be a law on the
Yes.
calendar. Thank you.
Staff updates. Do you want to
Go first. We had talked about, or there'd been a request about working on the rain garden at City Hall.
I noticed when I walked in tonight that it was cleaned up
The invasives were removed.
and the invasives were removed and the garbage was removed. I'm still worried about this soil. It's pretty rock hard. I guess there's some kind of special soil for that or something.
Look at you with my notes. They are still working on a plan. Thank you for the comment to refurbish, to kind of, I was just going from memory, clean up the spillways, other green infrastructure maintenance recommendations, which probably does mean re-aerating or loosening up the soil, putting in some new plants, and replacing some mulch and pea gravel and just freshening the whole thing up. So that's going to take a little bit longer, but it's in the works.
Thank you. The little plaque probably could use some help too.
The plaque is aged, isn't it?
Yes,
Weathered.
a lot.
So we've already talked about a couple of my staff updates. The invasive plant letters that were discussed the last couple of meetings were mailed earlier this month. We did have one that bounced back, but just one. That's been noted in our records. I have not been able to find a new address for coastside propagation, which was the one that came back. So noted that in the records. Last week, actually exactly a week ago, we had a Bosca landscape class on water-wise edible gardening. We actually held it out in the lobby here. Low participation, low turnout, unfortunately, but the folks who were here were very engaged, had some very great questions. It was an excellent class. Bob and I were both there and learned a lot from it. So, I guess I would say we'll probably try again with that and continue to try to promote that and get the word out, and would appreciate, help when that comes around again and kind of getting that message out that it is really a very worthwhile opportunity. We've already talked about Adopt a Spot. Just a brief update on the Beacon Award. Many of you are probably familiar with that. It's a statewide awards program. The city has already received a gold award overall, but we can increase in specific categories when our metrics meet higher goals. So it looks like our agency greenhouse gas savings is now at 32%, which puts us well in the realm of getting a Platinum Spotlight Award. So we'll be applying for that. And I guess the last quick note is the County Green Business Coordinator. We mentioned that we met with her. She is actually going to be speaking at the Chamber Board meeting next month on May 16th. So that's something that we're hoping to really start to build those relationships with the local business community and be able to get that information out to them. And kind of coming from that Bosca landscape class and programs in other communities, we have started a discussion with South San Francisco Scavenger about compost giveaways. So folks at the class had asked where they might be able to get good local compost, and so we kind of opened up that conversation and are looking into ways that we might be able to provide that. A lot of things to work through. Karen and I had a call with them this afternoon to just kind of understand what some of the initial concerns are, but it seems promising that we can find a way to make that work. Yes?
I just wanted to comment or thank the staff for a very successful Habitat Day last Saturday. Bob and Adrian and Jeff Franco did an amazing job. Megan was there, I was there, and Glenn was there. And how many people did we have? Maybe
Not 25, 30.
That was going to be Bob's staff update.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to really say how wonderful it was.
Dividing and conquering.
I was sort of the walking wounded because I had carpal tunnel surgery, so I couldn't do my normal And so I kind of manned the desk, and the city staffers went out there and attacked the broom,
Yeah.
and it was awesome. Just awesome. So go ahead.
It's one of the
Just steal your
places,
thunder,
just
Bob.
as we're talking about this, is one of the places that Glenn and I talked about yesterday as far as education with the children at Littman. I mean, it's tough because, their eyes just glaze over if they don't have a screen in front of their face. I shouldn't say that, but
That's true.
but so what we're trying to do is maybe get them involved in habitat. They're getting out and digging up this stuff. I mean, I see them doing that, maybe. So I am gonna give the call to school and talk to the new principal. I guess she's new-ish, from what I know, and see what we can get. I just think we should get more help. I was so bummed. I mean, 25 was great. It was great. We did a lot, but oh my gosh, I did not want to come off that mountain until I pulled every one of those little baby Scottish brooms, and I didn't make it. We had to eat.
Speaking of that, we maybe the education subcommittee needs to meet with city staff at some point.
I was actually going to suggest that you include me in your next meeting because we have a lot of education and outreach to items, I think, to discuss. I've been
good.
collecting a little list, and it's getting pretty
Yay.
lengthy.
Okay, perfect.
We'll schedule that. Maybe we should wait till next meeting, though, to see if we have another member on the education and outreach subcommittee, which would be
That's
great.
good. Thank you.
Okay, so it wasn't just broom. Michelle asked me to clear a forest of fennel. My back still hurts. A little older than I used to be. So there was 30 volunteers and 3 staff members. And we didn't do just a normal hillside. We also went up kind of above Mission Blue and took out a whole bunch there. So also I was going to report about the San Bruno Mountain Field Day with the HCP and all the members there. So I've got kind of a long list on that, but I'll try and breeze through it. It was a 6 or 7 hour meeting. So the HCP is focusing on more accurate mapping of their host plants on the mountain. Some interesting facts. The bay checker spot was found on the ridge of the mountain until the 80s, and the original host plant was Plantago erecta, and so there's a similar invasive Plantago lanceolata, and so Disney funded a year of reintroduction of the checker spot butterfly onto this invasive plant, and it worked. And so now the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation has funded another 5 years of this reintroduction effort. So, so the checker spot actually took to this similar invasive that is more prevalent than the native plant. And so anyway, that would seem pretty neat to me.
So we now have 4 endangered butterflies that live on the mountain.
Wow.
And so HCP has recently received $20,000 from the state to establish a seed collection system to be used in the event of a fire or other disturbance. They are looking at focusing on pushing scrub off the ridge and other grassland areas. They're not going to be doing any more controlled burns. They're looking into grazing, and they're looking at Calliope Hill's potential grazing site once they roll out this program. And PG&E has recently picked a mitigation site that they're going to work on in the West Peak. Of the 13 rare and endangered plants on San Bruno Mountain, 6 of them are endemic. The San Bruno Mountain manzanita used to be endangered and very rare, but has now spread to an area of about 20 acres on the mountain.
Nice.
Oh, fantastic.
And bumblebees are the only insect that can pollinate the manzanita due to the flower shape, and I thought this was fascinating, and the sonic frequency of the bumblebee's wings that makes the pollen fall off onto the bumblebee and then pollinates it.
Oh, wow.
And so it's the actual sonic wave and not a physical...
So cool.
Yeah, that I like. And so this one, I hope I have the numbers right because she just mentioned it in passing, but McKesson, which there's a large piece of land from McKesson, they recently gave the HCP over $400,000 for deferred maintenance. So that money is going to go towards maintaining the McKesson parcel, which includes parts of Owl and Buckeye Canyon and portions of the hill under the Crocker tank. Oh. So that should be some major work going on there, and they're still in the planning phases. San Bruno Mountain has the only Calliope butterfly population west of the bay. So that wraps up the most interesting notes. I had lots of notes, but I tried to kind of condense it down for here. So lots of good stuff happening. The HCP is, are you guys familiar with that? It's a, you guys, Michelle might know way more than I do, but it's...
HCP is the Habitat Conservation Plan, and it was Brisbane, San Bruno Mountain has the first habitat conservation plan in the United States. It was in response to Section 10 of the Endangered Species Act allowing illegal killing of endangered species, and a HCP was set up to mitigate that. And so we have one on San Bruno Mountain where we try to maintain the butterfly habitat. And so it was very controversial. It's still very controversial, but we now have new habitat managers and through the county, and things are going much better than they did the first 30 years.
Yeah, and so the habitat managers, they work for the San Mateo County Parks, and then they work in conjunction with like Brisbane and Daly City and South San Francisco, and there's some government agencies involved and lots of biologists and volunteers, and once a year they have an annual day for the
Trustees and staff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's what this report was. So Glenn had asked about future habitat restoration above Buckeye Canyon, so we're hoping this McKesson funds will work on this, and I'll be checking in with Ramona and kind of reporting back and seeing if we can incorporate that.
Can I jump in, Bob? And I just wanted to have the committee think about, and maybe a good product would be a map of the areas that we're trying to maintain with our habitat restoration days, but when we have 3 a year, do we want to just work on city sites that nobody else is going to maintain, or do we want to do some of the stuff that's in the HCP that's maybe in a county jurisdiction? Like, do we want to limit ourselves? Do we want to be, what's our priority? What is our priority, and which are the sites that we want to be choosing between? And I know that we have a lot of background and institutional knowledge when we pick sites, but we could go up into the park somewhere, and is that how we want to spend
It's
little resources?
It's a tough call because, there's so much to do. How do you choose? It's like Sophie's choice. If we hadn't worked in Costañas and Firth Canyons, those would be gone now. They would have been lost to ivy. The trees would be falling down, etc. So there's just so much to do that what we really need to do is get a larger core of volunteers and a larger volunteer program, and the habitat days that we do in Brisbane kind of help to develop that core. And I think there needs to be more of a bridge there to take the first-time volunteers that come for a Brisbane Habitat Restoration Day and get them in the flow of volunteers with Mountain Watch in the county and get them excited about volunteering. So it's hard for me to say because my heart's in both places.
I would think that the focus would probably be primarily for city-owned properties, right, since we're a city organization.
That's what we've done in the past, yes, and there's so much to do within the city limits.
I'd like to get some expert opinion on it, actually. I mean, where
do we make the most?
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah.
Where
do we make the most impact?
Where do we make the most impact? And now that we've got this other money that's going to be used in Allen Buckeye Canyon, it'd be interesting to know exactly where that's going to be. Because obviously we don't need to do that. So are there other places on the mountain? Are there places where, I remember when Joe Cannon, he teaches ecology at City College, was here a few years ago, he was talking about places where invasives have just begun to get a foothold as being really valuable places to work. So I know that there was a beginning of an infestation of scabiosa up by the water towers a couple of years ago. We did a habitat restoration day or two up there, but we haven't been back there for at least 5 years. So you're right. There are a lot of places we could go, but I don't feel qualified to say which one of them we should go to. I think we should get some advice from somebody.
Okay, let me think about that. You volley back to us. I immediately think of the habitat conservation plan managers, which are the county, but then their interest is maybe a little bit different than ours, so we can't just ask them. I mean, I think that's what we together have to make. I mean, we have been choosing over the years, but be making recommendations about.
Well, if we have 3 days per year, 2 of those can be in the city, and I think we should be working on city property like Firth Canyon and Castaños Canyon. But maybe one day a year we could work in the park, and that day I think should be chosen according to where we could do the most good.
And where we get permission to work.
Right.
I mean, this year, one of the places that I wanted us to work was that meadow above Trinity. And then it turns out that's not in the city limits. And yet that is so Brisbane. And so many Brisbane people use that area.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a, rich area. And then the other thing is we're talking about restoring the Guadalupe Trail.
Mm-hmm.
The Guadalupe Creek Trail, also known as the Crocker Trail, and getting people interested in working that area is important, and it is an important interface zone with the mountain. And invasives there tend to run all over the mountain. But then at the Northeast Ridge, there's so much to do. So it's a bigger discussion. We should just have a time when we actually discuss all the pros and cons of where we can work and what we should work at.
Do we have a subcommittee that's working on the area?
I've been on the subcommittee to help choose the habitat days and organize them.
Right.
Because of my interface with Mountain Watch.
Right.
So,
Which still makes a sense.
yeah.
We do want to, not to be off the subject, but we do want to go look at the Crocker Trail site with you sometime.
Yeah, so we should look at it together and really discuss, is that a reasonable thing that we can work on, or is that something where we should just bring in a machine and clear that whole thing out and redo?
So then, Michelle, maybe we'll get together with you, because I did do some research and I've talked to Ramona about her suggestions for sites, and
Okay.
Oh, good.
and so I've got a whole package put together with multiple photos and kind of listed the options, even for the July site if we want to switch it.
Good.
And I still have some more in the staff report, but
Okay.
if we'll get together with you and schedule something real soon so we can start advertising that.
Okay.
So moving on, I was requested to check into the signs clarifying the dogs on leash at the Quarry Road. So when I talked to Ramona, she said that she had sent an email to the California, I'll explain this to you members. Above Quarry Road, there's a portion of San Bruno Mountain that's California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and then it switches to county land. So at the California Fish and Wildlife, they have a sign that shows a dog on leash, like it's okay, but the trail goes up then into county where dogs are not allowed, and so there's no signage there. So Ramona said that they've had signs there in the past, and they've routinely been vandalized, removed, and thrown into the gullies in that area. So Ramona was hesitant to place more signs there, so her solution was to ask Fish and Wildlife to remove their signs, or see about putting no dogs on leash on their part of the property, instead of a sign up halfway up the hill. So she's already emailed Fish and Wildlife to see if they're open to changing their
sign.
So that way there's not dogs allowed at the bottom of the mountain, which would prevent them then from being further up the mountain. So that seemed like a good solution, or potential. So the Caltrans litter update, I'd put in a service request, and when we had our meeting, Michelle, I just looked at the county right-of-way map, and I didn't have the differentiation between Caltrans and then just general public right-of-way. So the portion of Harney Way that you were talking about for coastal cleanup, which is the northbound kind of off-ramp of 101, every year we do a coastal cleanup day that we tend to do the lagoon for cleaning up litter, and Michelle had suggested moving that to the bay where there's a lot of bird habitat. And so I had put in a service request for Caltrans, and they actually completed it. And they took, there's dozens of bags of litter that they got, but they didn't go that far because they actually have a dividing line. So we're researching that with staff about maybe doing the September cleanup day there. There's some logistical stuff to work out, parking, and it is near a freeway ramp and that kind of thing. So, but Caltrans did go out, and at least now there's, multiple bags of garbage that's not going to blow into the bay.
Good.
And then
Excellent.
when I was out doing the site visits to determine the habitat restoration day, I saw a team from Expeditors out with pickers and garbage bags. And so, I didn't see any garbage anywhere on the Crocker Trail, and I went to all parts of it. And then I talked to them, and I got their picture, and I'm going to try and promote it they were pretty stoked on it, and they come out on their lunch, and they said there's another crew that comes out on a different shift on their lunch, and also they take care of the trash on their portion of the trail. So that was, they were just out there. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And so that seems to be their practice. I don't know how long they've been doing it, but
Probably since I talked to them 2 months ago.
okay, yeah.
Good.
But anyway,
Yeah,
so it
that's
worked,
great.
and I've got a picture of them, and I'm gonna put that on social media at some point soon. It just was we had a lot of stuff posting recently, so that was a win.
Yeah, Lori Graham's been talking to the different businesses along there too,
Yeah,
to get them to take care of their.
yeah. I didn't hear where it came from, but he's like, "Oh yeah, and there's another shift of us that comes out," and so they're all excited that I took their picture and got their names. So
Oh, good.
that's all my staff updates.
Excellent, good, excellent, Bob.
Thank you.
Question. I have one question. Is the I got an email about the open space conference for this year. Did you guys get any emails about that? I think it's
Bay
coming up
Area
in May.
Open Space Council.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I got an email, but I looked at the agenda. Did you look at the agenda at all?
I kind of went through it briefly when I got the email. I think it was last week when I got it. So I just don't know if, I know in the past we've always had one person go or one or two people go. So I don't know if there's the ability. It's only a couple weeks away. On the 10th, I think, that weekend.
Yeah, I think someone could go. I think I was not as thrilled by the agenda as by what I'd heard from people other years, so I didn't pursue it much further. I can't remember. Do you have it? You don't have it in front of you, do you?
Let me see. I might. Wait, give me one sec. I just think here it is. Open space tickets going fast. Exclusive infantry. Yeah, open space. Let's see. May 10th.
May 10th.
Yeah, May 10th. Do you have to forecast? Can use this past. See if I can get into the actual event. Yeah, it's in the same place, the Crane Pavilion in Richmond.
I mean, I guess
Doesn't even look like they have all their speakers set.
they had something about implications of the wildfires.
Protocol practice, the future of conservation in America, leadership awards, beyond barriers, challenges and opportunities for parks and open space. I've seen fire and rain, implications of 2017 Northern California wildfires. Lead sponsor, Save the Redwood League. Lunch. East Bay Regional Park District is another sponsor. The importance of working lands in the changing world. Conservation, land network, science expansion. Notes from the Fourth Estate, hot topics on the environmental beat. A view from Sacramento. That was about it. And then at the last, it's like 20 minutes on taking action on climate change.
Yeah, I mean, some of that sounds. It didn't sound horrible. It just didn't. I was gonna suggest maybe Bob going, but I didn't see stuff that was like.
Yeah.
Bay Area focused. So, but if someone wants to go and there's still time, you know.
Do you want to go, Megan?
Oh.
I've been before. I don't have an automobile, so no, thank you. But I'm
out
actually.
Weekend, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I'm actually doing the bike to work day. I mean, I could
Oh,
change, but
Okay.
yeah, it's the same day.
Anybody else?
So I don't know if anybody else wants to go.
I might want to go because I actually could go this
Yeah,
year.
you could. You didn't get to go in the last
Let me
couple
look at the.
Do you want me to forward this
No,
to?
I got it.
Oh, you have.
I got it also the same time you did, so
Okay.
I'll take a look at it and see whether it's
Well, and we'll have Bob look and see if he wants to.
okay.
All right.
It's in his
I just wanted to bring that up.
agenda. All right, and then we had changed to the fourth Wednesday, particularly for one member that's not on the committee. So, and staff doesn't have a preference, but we just wanted to talk about if the third Wednesday might be better than the fourth, or if everyone's indifferent.
I would sure prefer the 16th.
It's fine with me.
Yeah.
Works with me.
I won't be.
But you say somebody really wants the fourth
I
Wednesday?
don't know, that was for Kima when he got on the school board.
He couldn't do the 4th.
Oh, okay.
So,
a conflict.
because we were always on the 3rd Wednesday.
What did you say, Claire?
I'm on a business trip till the 21st, but
All right, 23rd it is then.
And I think we're talking about,
For going on,
Not
ongoing.
time.
right. We don't want to set a meeting each month. We kind of want to, unless something, major happens.
Changes.
Always be on the 3rd or the 4th Wednesday. I don't know if people have preference.
I have no preference.
Well, if Claire's not here on the 16th, and everyone else can make, if we can all make the 23rd.
Can you make the 23rd, Glenn?
Yeah, it's a really horrible week for me. Really horrible. Like, that makes 4 nights gone.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I'm open to either, but we were talking about, do we want to move this back to the 3rd Wednesday of each month, or just keep it the 4th? Does anybody have a preference?
Generally, I don't care. I just care for May.
I don't care.
I would actually, in going forward, probably prefer the 3rd, but
I don't care.
Doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
But next month,
So what do we want to do next month?
4, Glenn, are you okay, hon?
Yeah.
She'll make it work.
We'll do the 23rd.
Okay. And we do have Keegan scheduled to come then, so.
And it's 6:30 is when we start the meeting, so we should really try to be here at 6:25 so that we're ready to go at 6:30.
Yeah.
We've not been good the last year about
No,
that.
we haven't.
And so whoever gets here first gets their choice of chair, except for the middle one.
There we go.
I know, Claire, you had work tonight. It's not, believe me, we've started so many
We
meetings
know.
late, long before you were on the committee.
Okay.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
This was longer than normal because we had the liaisons normally.
This goes back to Megan.
There you go.
or is this the only?